Thanks, everybody. I'm so excited to be here this morning, and I'm happy to say I don't have any pants like Richard Simmons, so perhaps that's a bad thing, but I wore my crazy dress, and that's about as crazy as I get. So I'm here to tell you today a little bit about Medutainment, and you're probably saying, what the heck does that mean? Did she make up the word? Well, I did make up the word, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it, and it basically just tells you a bit about my teaching approach. And let me tell you a little bit about how that all came to be. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a person who loves to learn. Some might say I'm a little bit wacky about the way that I like to learn things, and if I'm really excited about a topic, I will actually share it. So I'll tell other people about it. So I find that I learn, and sometimes in really unexpected places. So I learn from my patients. I learn from my students frequently because they're constantly asking me questions. I learn from my children, and especially my little guy who's now 5. I just watch him. He's like a little sponge, and he wanders around, and everything is wonderful. He approaches everything with this sense of wonder. And I remember that. I remember feeling that way, and I finally feel that way again. But I also remember right about the time when I lost that sense of wonder. And sadly, I think that was in medical school, when learning became a very serious endeavor. It wasn't just my medical school. This is medical schools all across North America and Europe with a similar approach of the 2 years of basic science and the 2 years of clinical. And I remember sitting in these rows of concrete, they were concrete bunkers almost, and we would sit for 8 hours a day and have dry technical didactic lectures in the dark with slide carousels, sometimes with the overhead projectors that wound. It wasn't optimal for the way that I like to learn. So then after that, 2 years on the wards, and I had to try and remember some of the basic sciences I'd learned in those first 2 years and apply them to patients that I was seeing. And it was at that time I started to hatch this little plan in my brain. I wondered if there was a better way, or at least a more engaging way to experience medical education. And that's when I started my small rebellion. That was my vow, that I wanted to make medical education more entertaining and fun, because medicine is amazing. The practice of medicine is amazing. It's full of wonder. So why isn't medical education? So what I decided to do was to foster meaningful learning. So I take that very, very seriously, but a wise man once told me, don't take yourself too seriously. So that's why I look like a Simpson up there. You can go to simpsonizeme.com and Simpsonize yourself if you like. And so I try not to take myself too seriously. So I teach learners at all levels, from little kids in the classroom to high school students, undergraduate medical students to residents. But what I'd like to tell you about is a course that I do with the first-year medical students that Chris was telling you about. So they're at about week 7 of medical school, and then they come to my block, which is infection, immunity, and inflammation. And I teach a course that has about 20 hours of large group teaching. And it's on a topic that's amazing, it's fantastic, I love it. It's bacteria. And everybody goes, yeah, we don't really like bacteria. But what I hope is by the end of the course that they're like, yeah, you know, bacteria are actually kind of cool, and I want to learn more about them. So what I did with the course was I took my serious approach where I based it on educational principles called scaffolding, where there's actually a bare bones. So there's an outline or a blueprint, and I call it my Bacterial Roadmap. So this is just a schematic of a section of that roadmap, where I actually flash it up at the beginning of the class and say, okay, this is where we're going today. So for example, if you look on the far right, we might be talking about Staphylococcus that day. So we can move down the map and say it's a bacteria that's gram-positive, it's a coccus, and we sort of move down, and then we talk about it that day. So what the students know attached to each spot on that Bacterial Roadmap is there's an online chapter textbook that I put together for them that's it's just written out, and it's about the bugs. So there's a similar format for each of the bugs. So there's some sort of interesting hook or something that might draw your attention, and then we talk about the bug, the diseases it causes, how to treat those diseases, and then the prevention. And then there's also a bug bio. So it's just like a small condensed version of the interesting things about the bug. And when we come together in our large group sessions to talk about the bacteria, the format's usually the same. So there's a quiz where we use eye clickers to talk about the last session we had. So we do, I like to use the eye clickers because it's, even the shyest student can participate. And then I can see to make sure that everybody got the important information from the last session. Then we talk about the clinical cases. And then we end with peer teaching, which has been fun. That's what had been alluded to earlier. With the peer teaching, what happens is there's a group of medical students who are charged with teaching their colleagues about the antibiotic treatment for that bacteria, and they have to do it in a fun way, and boy, are those guys amazing. So they do, like I said, raps and songs. I remember one year there was a whole game show called America's Got Syphilis, and things like that, so it works beautifully. So in addition to all of that seriousness, there was still that Simpson side of me, that fun side of me, and I kind of wondered, is there something else I can do to help the memories stick a little bit? So that's a scanning electron micrograph of Velcro. And what I was hoping was, even if they're sitting in the classroom and we're learning from each other, is there some way that I can help those memories stick? So I would like to show you one of the things that I've tried. If you just give me a moment. This is something that I use to teach about abdominal abscesses. I have a scarf, but it will interfere with the mic. So I'm supposed to look like a beat poet, just in case you were wondering. Can you guys all hear the music? Okay. Dig this, daddios. I have a groovy way for you to remember how abdominal abscesses form. So sit back, relax, and listen. I got a story about Harry Houdini and the enteric jazz band. Poor Harry died on Halloween many years ago, 2 weeks after a punch to the belly. So how did a punch lead to his demise? Well, I gotta take you down to the cellular level. Meet the cool cats in the enteric EEB jazz band. E number 1, E. coli on the piano. He's the hippest dude in your gut, and he plays a mean piano with his many flagelli. E number 2, Enterococcus on bass. Despite his wimpy reputation, he can be pretty mean with that jazz band. E number 3, an enteric gram-negative. He's a sessional drummer, and any old enteric gram-negative will do. Citrobacter, Proteus, Edwardsiella, no matter. And then there's B. Finally, we have the best saxophonist this side of your anus, Mr. Bacteroides fragilis, aka B-Frag. So, what's going on with our friend Harry Houdini? I gotta take you back 2 weeks. A punch to the gut, a ruptured appendix, and that jazz band was unleashed. EE and B started to multiply in his peritoneum. You can hear them, and the inflammation is starting. But there's too much oxygen, so only the E's can multiply. E. coli, enterococci, and all of the enteric gram-negative bacilli, they multiply and inflame, and almost all of the anaerobes die, except B-Frag. Remember, our friend B-Frag is sly. He produces catalase and superoxide dismutase so he can detoxify those oxygen particles. So he just sits there, waiting, not playing, notice, no saxophone. And while we're waiting, let me tell you a bit more about Harry Houdini. Houdini was the greatest magician who ever lived. Budapest, where he was born, America, where he grew up. And as a teen, Harry started the magic. Sadly, in the beginning, he kind of sucked. Card tricks, vanishing acts, he even vanished an elephant, but he still kind of sucked. 1900, the real magic started. Escape acts, escapes from handcuffs, chains, ropes, hanging in the air or deep in the water. I heard once he told some of his secrets. I won't share, that would spoil the magic. Harry's last show, Detroit, the Motor City, October 24th, 1926. The next day, an admit to the hospital, and on Halloween, he died from his abdominal abscess. So how did he get an abscess in his belly? Well, it was probably from a punch 2 weeks earlier. At the end of all of his shows, he'd challenge everyone in the audience for someone to come up and punch him in the belly. No one volunteered that night, so Harry went back to his dressing room to relax. But a young guy from McGill, a boxer, he punched Harry, who didn't have time to tense his belly muscles. The punch, a ruptured appendix, an abscess. What? The punch, a ruptured appendix, an abscess. Okay, let's review. So the force of the punch caused a ruptured appendix. Then his normal fecal flora, the enteric jazz band guys, escaped into his peritoneal cavity. And that's why you heard all 4 guys playing initially. But oxygen made Bacteroides sit back and wait while the E's, E. coli, enterococci, and the other enterics kept multiplying for a long, long time until most of the oxygen was used up. Then the inflammation led to tissue necrosis and decreased blood supply, which also led to decreased oxygen in the area. And Bacteroides was waiting for his time to shine. And once the oxygen tension was just right, B. frag is able to multiply. And here he is on the saxophone. So in stage 2, B. frag's capsule stimulates T cells, and that leads to abscess formation. Remember, it's his capsule that triggers the abscess. So to review again, in stage 1, all of the gut bugs escape. The oxygen level is high, so only E. coli, enterococci, and the other gram-negative enterics multiply. Anaerobes die, but B. frag is waiting for his time to shine. Takes a while, but in stage 2, once the oxygen level drops, B. frag can multiply, and his capsule triggers abscess formation. Remember the cap. So that's what happened to Harry. He got no treatment and croaked from that abscess. And that, my friends, is how Harry Houdini and the Triple E-B Jazz Band can help you remember how abdominal abscesses are formed. Thanks. Peace. So we were actually able to study what happened and whether that was an effective strategy. I can take off my glasses. And what I found was 99 to 100% of the students, 4 weeks after that intervention, actually got the material related to the Harry Houdini story correct on the final exam. And when we looked at other information related to Bacteroides fragilis or B. frag, only 52%. So the stuff that wasn't covered in my Harry Houdini story, only 52% of the students got that part correct. So it works. So this led to some positive reinforcement for me. And I started to think about, well, what can I call this approach? It's a little wacky. And so I started calling it Medutainment, which I define as entertaining medical education that's effective in changing thought or behavior. So the principles behind Medutainment, they're actually pretty simple. The first one is make sure that you simplify the message. So there's usually 1 or 2 big things that students will take away from a session, that your learners will take away. So for my TEDMED talk today, mine is that Medutainment is a fun and entertaining approach in medical education that's effective, and I'd really like you to try it. The second principle is involve your learners. So learning is a two-way street. I find that I'm learning from them, they are learning from me. So make sure that everybody's involved, and then everybody's got a stake in being successful. The third principle is to take creative risks. So I find that if I role model something wacky like this, which still terrifies me, then the learners are a little bit more excited about taking some risks as well. And I also find it creates a safe environment, so everybody is more at ease and able to learn. And finally, evaluate and refine. So I really would like it if people study what they do, find out why it works, why it doesn't work, write it up, disseminate the information, because I think that's a big part of scholarship. So I will tell you that the ultimate goal here is really for better patient care. That is the final goal, but then making medical education a little bit more humane for the students going through. And I'll also tell you as an educator or as a student if you're teaching, you don't have to dress up, you don't have to wear the wacky hat and get hat head. There's other creative things that you can do. So what I'm hoping to do is just share a few other things that I've tried in the classroom that you guys could hopefully try as well. So here is one example. And it is the Marshmallow toothpick model. So on the first day of class, there's 200 students. I don't know them, they don't know me. And what I'm trying to do is set a fun, creative, and safe learning environment. So we've got the dental students and the medical students, and I challenge them. And I ask the president from the medical class to come up, president from the dental class to come up, and I give them a challenge. They have a bag of mini marshmallows and a box of toothpicks, and I ask them to build basically, it looks like a chain link fence. And so these are all type A students, they're all top of their class, and they're trying to build this thing, and I tell them whoever builds the highest one will win. And so they build it flat, and then they try and stand it up, and it falls down, and people are licking marshmallows, and they're trying to get the thing to stand up, but it never really works. So then we change the rules. And what I tell them is, well, okay, let's step back for a second, and what you can do is you can actually build this wall with the layers in the wall, but then you can use the toothpicks to make little crosses in between. So you can have layers of wall, and then you can have crosses in between that make the wall more sturdy. And so then it starts to work quite nicely. And the walls start going up very nicely, and it works really, really well. And then the students are very dismayed when I come, like I look a little bit evil there, but I come along and I cut down the wall. So what I tell them is what they are doing is they are actually building a model of a bacterial cell wall. Bacterial cell walls are made up of proteins or peptides and sugars or glycan, so it's peptidoglycan. So the marshmallows are the sugar and the toothpicks are the protein. And bacteria are able to build this lattice and give it a lot of strength because there's the cross-links between each of the layers. So I'm now the penicillin or a beta-lactam antibiotic, and I come along and interfere with the cross-linking, which makes the wall weak, the wall falls apart, and then the bacteria dies. So it's a neat analogy or memory hanger that we can keep coming back to for other antibiotics and when we talk about the bacterial cell wall structure and the differences between bacterial cells and our cells. So if you're a little bit worried about doing a demonstration, you could even just show a picture. So that is my analogy for Streptococcus pneumonia. So Strep pneumonia is a bacteria that causes many infections, including bacteremia, pneumonia, otitis. And what's neat about Strep pneumonia is it has got a sugar coating, just like Smarties or M&Ms. And so the bacteria has got that lattice that I told you about, but then on the outside it's got this sugar coating. And so what can happen is your immune cells come along, they want to try and gobble up that Streptococcus pneumonia, but they can't because it's slippery, because it has this sugar coating. So that's the basis of the analogy, and you can take it further. You can talk about the different serotypes or different capsular types of strep pneumonia, looking at all the different colors of Smarties. You can talk about the vaccine and say that, okay, there's different pieces, different capsular types in that vaccine. That's why there's so many colors of the Smarties. So it's a neat thing that you can keep building on. So what I thought was really cool was I was starting to do these, and a couple of years into teaching the course, the students started to come forward saying, we want to help teach. We want to do things as well. What can we do to help? So I had a summer student, Adam Dryden, who had some great ideas. And then I started to think more about it, and I thought this would be great. Because I know when I went to medical school, this was the only kind of apple that I knew about, and I studied from textbooks. I still have textbooks that are on my shelves. And I thought about a quote from Cicero, who said, if you wish to persuade me, you must think my thoughts, feel my feelings, and speak my words. And I thought, what better way to get messages across than if students teach students, so peer teaching. So then I started to think as well, this is what the apple that the students of today talk about. And so I was learning, this was in 2006, and I was learning about podcasts, which are old hat now, but at the time were quite revolutionary. I'm not very computer savvy, so Adam was fantastic. He said, well, I have a way we can do podcasts. And so we started coming up with a few guidelines for them. They had to be short, less than 4 minutes, interesting, and only review material that we'd covered. So no new material in these podcasts. And then he came back to me the following week and said, do you think we could do some songs? I said, yeah, that would be fantastic. And so what I want to do is share with you one of the songs. Right at the very, right there, there's the play button right there. So this is about a patient with tetanus. Please bear in mind, we weren't trying to make fun of patients, we were just trying to help them remember.
To receive my treatment soon, and now I can't really breathe. You need to secure my airway. Start me on tetanus IGs. And when I hurt, start me on antibiotics. Only metronidazole will do. Lips, shuddering lips, locking jaw, contracting back, spasming face. Sweet Ted tonight.
Ba, ba, ba. Yeah, we can stop. We can stop. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, so there's actually multiple versions of different songs that Adam and John Hillner put together, and that was Darcy Thorpe singing Sweet Tetani. And so then I became inspired. So last year I was trying to think of a way that I could just help students remember about strep pharyngitis. And it's a very, very common reason that patients visit their physicians. And a lot of times, just because there's a public perception that if I get antibiotics, I will feel better immediately. And so a couple of things about strep, you can't tell by looking if it's actually a viral infection or strep, so you have to do a swab. So I wanted to get that message across. And also that if it is positive for strep, you've actually got a little bit of time before you need to treat. You're not going to make a big dent in the patient's symptoms, but you will prevent rheumatic fever, and to use penicillin. So what I've got is, that is where the link is underneath if you want to see the whole song, but I thought I would just sing you just the chorus. And my apologies to the Talking Heads. This is their song Psycho Killer, which I have massacred, so I apologize. Okay, so do you guys remember this part? Strep pharyngitis, qu'est-ce que c'est? Don't want no swab, 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 swab. I want my penicillin right away. Strep pharyngitis, qu'est-ce que c'est? Swab, 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 swab. I don't want it. I want my penicillin right away. And my doctor said no. So I said, oh, 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 I just want to feel better. So there is more online if you would like to take a look on YouTube. And again, apologies to the Talking Heads. It's the only song I know. I am planning on doing another song in the future, hopefully about parasites. So what's kind of cool, I think, is that I'm involved with teaching and learning about infections. And now I've started my own epidemic of sorts. I've had my own little rebellion against dry medical school instruction, and I'm trying to spread it. I'm spreading it through workshops, through papers that I'm writing, and I think it's starting to pick up. And the other cool thing is that students are actually demanding it from profs in further blocks as well. So I can tell you right now that the Medutainment bug does not discriminate. It infects people from all walks of life with the idea that medicine is an amazing, wonderful field, and that medical education can also be interesting and fun. Thank you very much.